stats all before that no Forest play. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Nottingham Forest travel to Bournemouth and lose. In other news, water is wet and the sun is hot. The flames of elation from the win versus Porto were quickly extinguished as Forest failed to fire, and the most predictable result on your betting slip dropped into place. A tepid first half didn't get much better after the break as the Reds seemed lacklustre and devoid of ideas. A tough place to go, but with Forest still sat in the bottom three, are they now in a relegation battle, or is it just too early to say? Welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Greg Oram, and joining me on the panel, it's the Statman, Danscape and Raf, the Random Pundit. So, Forest fans, are you worried, or do we all just need to calm down a bit?
Bournemouth get the win, and they get that clean sheet. For the two, Nottingham Forest nil.
Yeah, we were miles off first half, and they credit to them. They're a better side overall. Absorbed the game second half. You know, we had a bit more of a go, but they absorbed the game well. I still think we've got to give a viewpoint of the game in the bigger picture, not just our game, the game in the bigger picture. A big fan of it, but it's got to step in because it goes straight in the goal, and that can't be allowed. For me, that's not good enough when it's clearly a goal kick.
Yes, so it is always a sobering moment when we are, reviewing games where the Reds have been beaten. We kind of half expected that, I guess you could say, as I said, it's one of those predictable results. But for those that were there, and I was in attendance with Orlando, it was a tough watch, as I'm sure those of you that saw it on the television will subscribe to as well. Plenty of you already joining us for the live. Thank you very much for doing so. Don't forget to let us know your thoughts as well on the defeat to Bournemouth, and give us your comments so we can give you shout outs and pop some up on the screen and start talking about what you think. Please do hit like and subscribe as well. Follow us on all your socials. You can find us on X and TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, the usual places as well. No Richard Spray with us today. He has landed in the UK, which is great news. And obviously spending time with family at the moment means that clash of calendars means it's just us three. Hopefully Rich will be back with us for the preview of Man United on Thursday, but he will definitely be with us for the match at the City Ground on Saturday. And one or two of you I know are going to come and say hello. Big Arn is in the comments. He's getting those baby Guinnesses ready. He was saying before we came on air, Danscape, he thought he's worried that, he says, I hope I've persuaded Danscape into an early start. And I just said, I think you scared the shit out of him a little bit, to be honest. We're talking about those baby Guinnesses. Poor Danscape. But no, listen, we definitely want you to come and say hello to us. And Big Arn, you're not going to be hijacking anybody's day. You guys are really important to us for tuning in and all the rest of it. So please do come and say hello. Damon Hazel's with us as well. He says hello. And Brucey, good morning, gents. Steph Wilkinson is in the comments, says, good morning. Please give me something to be hopeful about. We'll try, Steph. Pat Brett is with us. He says, when will we learn you've got to match up physically in midfield when you go to Bournemouth? It happens every single year. GL says it went wrong when you sacked Ange. Right, so one or two holding on for Ange still. Good morning, Danscape. Let's go straight into it, yeah? The team was something we talked about. We thought there might be some rest offered to the likes of Douglas Luiz. That didn't happen. Same team that faced up against Porto, barring the one switch with Savona coming in for the injured Zinchenko. What did you make of that? And what's your overall riding thoughts on the game as a whole?
We predicted some change in midfield, didn't we? Possibly up front, possibly one of the wingers. Some kind of rotation to see the benefits of the squad. But I suppose when you think about Sean Dyche, he likes a bit of old school, philosophy in football, doesn't he? So don't change a winning team is probably what drove it, and trying to build something for everybody to kind of get behind in that team on the back of that good result in the week. So I guess that's why he did it. Unfortunately, it just looked like a team that was different, like a different level of intensity from what we saw on Thursday night. unfortunately. And that's partly because you've got the contrast of Bournemouth, who were, really good and really, really up for it and very much in our face and didn't give us any time to settle. But also partly, we just didn't seem to have the legs from our side to compete with them. And I think we did it for maybe the first 5-10 minutes, and then we just seemed to sort of fade away, didn't we, after that? And look, on another day, the incidents with the goals don't happen, and I think there's a chance where you go and you get something from the game, but we didn't really deserve anything from the game. It would have been a bit of a smash and grab to take something because Bournemouth, put everything into it.
What about you, Raf? Good morning to you, or good afternoon as it is now. What about you, mate, when it comes to that team? Were you happy that he wanted to get more out of Douglas Luiz just a couple of days after Porto? Did Dyche get that wrong, in your opinion, do you think?
So, hello, everybody. I, as usual, agree with Dan on just about most things. But I do agree 100% with everything he just said there. But what I would say is that I think Dyche was a bit of damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation with that squad selection. Talk about doing some rotation, but when the team came out, the general consensus from me, from everyone, was this is absolutely brilliant. It's Porto again. Let's go again. Fantastic. Oh, Luiz has been picked again. That's great. He can do 2 games. That's fantastic. There's a lot of positivity around it. So, but if he'd put out a different side and we'd lost 2-0, then would everyone be going, oh, we should have just started the team that had won Porto? So I really think that it's just a situation that it is. But what was really positive was by the time the final whistle had come, we'd seen the light of Dominguez back on the pitch. We'd seen more of Taiwo. Callum Wendo had come on, albeit for a very small amount of time. Hutchison had some decent minutes as well. And certainly one of the massive positives from this game is I am now not as concerned as absence, with Savona looking actually what we need. And I think he did very, very well against the pretty much form player in the Premier League at the moment, and equipped himself suitably well to bode well until that January.
I was at the game, and I must admit, it was a very difficult watch. You're right, Dan. First 10 minutes, we were there. We looked lively. We looked sharp. It just seemed to drop off, and the midfield battle was being lost all the time. I didn't see us win any second balls. They were first the ball all the time. This Bournemouth team, and I hate to say it, are so good. They're second in the table for a reason. You can add a load of ingredients into the mix. The fact that they're playing a tight stadium with a small fan base, I guess, to get really behind them. But for me, it's down to the manager that's got them so well organised. These players for Bournemouth know exactly what they're doing. They know their system. They know their roles, and their patterns of play and their intricate touches and their knowledge of each other running off balls. It was really impressive. And I hate to say it, this isn't a Bournemouth podcast, guys, but look, we are reviewing the game, and I'm looking at what Bournemouth were doing to us and how we were trying to cope and how we didn't cope with that. And like I said, the midfield battle for me was being lost. I was one of those people that actually was very surprised when the team came out. I didn't think it was a good idea to play Douglas Luiz at all, even if Dyche thought he could get more minutes out of him. I just thought it's got to be a horses for courses scenario. And for me, going to Bournemouth away was crying out for a Sangare or a Ryan Yates or a Dominguez to come into the pitch. I said on the last pod, has Ange's legacy now been, or is Ange's legacy the fact that he's left us with Taiwo? Because Taiwo was nowhere near anyone's thinking whatsoever. He was only in the squad because Aina was injured. And yet he pops up surprisingly against Chelsea, and everyone sits up and says, oh, okay, well, Taiwo did okay. And I was one of them. And then he's coming off the bench at half time. He's getting in ahead of the £28 million player we bought in Callum Wendo. So my head's kind of being a bit scratched there. But yes, at the same time, Taiwo is probably the big, physical, strong kind of Sean Dyche player. So I'm going with it. I'm going with the flow. But I just felt, for me personally, that Dyche got the team selection wrong. It wasn't what I wanted to see. And I agree with you, Raf. I think Savona did play well. I think that he looked like he is fitting him quite well, and I think the more minutes you get, the better. But Danscape, no James McAtee in the squad again. What is that all about in your view? Is James McAtee just a face that isn't going to fit? We've said the same about Amari Hutchinson recently, or is it a case that we just got too many players to fit in?
Look, I did see some people were pushing the story that he's been suffering from a virus on X, which I don't know how much to believe into that or not. So it's possible there's something we don't know about with him. Where does he fit in? I mean, the trouble is you're going away to Bournemouth, like you've said. You kind of the players you probably want in that game in your midfield role are Sangare, Dominguez, and Yates. And so if anyone was going to miss out, it's who would you miss out that's of a similar role to McAtee, I suppose? And where does he come in? Who's he going to replace? Because he's not as good on the wing as, say, Hutchinson. Hutchinson potentially can play in the 10 if you got an injury to Gibbs White, for example. So I think it's just that, yeah, he doesn't quite have a role that he's established, because he's not known for being a solid central midfielder, but he's also he's a little bit less flexible when he goes into the front line. He can play on the wing, but he's not a natural winger that I would have thought Sean Dyche would be looking for in his style of team. So McAtee's a surprise. I mean, Jesus starting was a bit of a surprise because he put in a massive shift as well. And, it's the kind of game where you're just going to be chasing the ball a lot. You're going to go there and struggle to get hold of it. So I think that was also a bit of a surprise to...
So better to start with Tyro, in your opinion, then? Because Wood's injured.
That's what we said on the preview, wasn't it? It's kind of like...
You said that.
It suits going away from home and trying to just cause problems, which he did in the second half. Tyro did that in the second half. Just purely his strength, and he just disrupted them a little bit, that we occasionally managed to get the good break of the ball and build something. But I think overall, I agree with you on Savona to a point in that he had a good game defensively. But the trouble is, at this level, you need someone that can do the defensive stuff and then still offer a threat, don't you? Because that's the difference. That's the difference maker in these games. It's hard to say, right, we're fine with Savona because he can handle a player defensively, if you just lose that extra overload threat and things in attack, which he's shown in some games. But I just worry that if you're going into tough games in the Premier League and you don't have a fully functional all-round fullback that's like a top fullback, you're just limiting yourself, aren't you? You're just limiting your threat, even if you can handle the defensive side of it. So, yeah, a surprising lineup, but I think we just have to put it down to the fact that he's new to the squad. And, he just wanted to go with something that was tried and tested, because there was no time to prepare and no time to really deal with both games in that much detail for me.
I think the thing for me with Savona is that he's the player we've got. We are short in the fullback areas. If we could split Nico Williams in half, it'd be amazing, because he can play both sides, and he currently is rivaling Ando for player of the season, because he just doesn't let you down. He's so so assured in his performance. I'm not saying he was outstanding, but he just doesn't let you down. On the right back situation going forward, I just wanted us to be solid defensively, because I think we build from the back. I have seen Savona come forward. I'm not saying that he's an out and out, overlapping right back, but I have seen him come forward, and I think we saw that against Porto as well. He won the penalty, for example. So I think there is a player there that can operate in that fashion. But I think when you're going away from home against Bournemouth, the way you set up surely has to be a little bit more savvy. I saw a Bournemouth opposition view on Red Side of the Trent, actually. I only tuned in briefly to this, but he was talking about how Dyche just did not have any answers when he was the Everton manager, Raf, when he took the Everton team to Bournemouth, and just had no answer to the Bournemouth press. And the Bournemouth fan was saying Dyche isn't going to be able to do anything against Iraola. He just doesn't know how to manage him, doesn't know how to set his team up against that. And what I saw was pretty much that. It was their press was the best press I've seen for a long time. When you see it in the flesh, they are really going into the back line and making the back line come under real pressure. And I'm again, don't get me wrong, I'm not having any meltdown. I'm trying to kind of analyse that. And I'm still very happy that Sean Dyche is our manager. I think he will sort it out. It was only his first game. But on this game alone, as a standalone game, I just felt I wanted a bit more from Dyche in terms of how we set the team up. Do you think that's fair, Raf, or do you think I'm kind of overreaching?
Well, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But yeah, I just think everyone just needs to calm down a bit. Like we got smashed 5-0. like in January, right? When we went to Bournemouth. That did not happen at all. Okay. We last season were looking at Villa and made a mockery of the fact that they could not win after their European games that following weekend. It's not rocket science to figure out we've got the same problem, right? You look at the team that came out, we're knackered, absolutely knackered. Anderson needs this week off, right? Full season last season, which is the most he's ever played by a country mile in his career, then goes away with the under-21s, then comes back and is playing, then going off with England and playing 90 minutes with England and coming back, then playing twice a week the entire time. He looked a yard short the whole game right from the off, really, to be honest. And this week is just fantastic for giving him some downtime and to get him back. And I think that's really could be said for the whole squad. So I'm looking at it and I'm just going, no, I'm not overly concerned. Yes, it's not like they had 15 shots on our goal, like by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. There were a couple of breaks that got pretty dicey and scary, I would say. It was probably the one thing that Milenkovic did wrong, which was for that second goal of just backing off, because actually he was pretty good today. But I just think that this is a team where Dyche has not had enough time to be able to get across what he needs to be able to get across. And this week presents that amount of time. I mean, they're coming in today because he is so unhappy with the way that things are and that we need to turn things around quickly enough. And Greg, from what you said as well, like we didn't win a single second ball. What is Dyche famous for in his teams? Winning second balls. That's his thing, right? He's absolutely key. So we haven't transitioned fully into this Dyche Wone Stone era of what the team is set up to do. But given that he's just taken it, we won at Porto, we did better than we did in January at Bournemouth, and at that juncture, this Bournemouth team is more on fire than that Bournemouth team was when we got rolled 5-0 in January last year as well. So all things considered, I think there's perspective to be had here, and I'm very pleased the fact that Hutchinson got some time, because to be honest, of all of our wingers, or even Morgan, when Hutchinson's got the ball, I genuinely still actually get quite excited as to what might happen and what he might do, because he just looks livelier, maybe because he's fully rested compared to everyone else. But he just generally looks like he's got more about him. And this bodes well the fact that Dyche has given him time and he might come into play a bit.
On Anderson, what I will say is you've all heard me harp on about how good he is, and that hasn't changed. He is good. He does look leggy. I thought yesterday was his least effective game in a Forest shirt. That's the nice way of saying his worst game in a Forest shirt, and that's fine. You know, everyone's entitled to a bad game, but I just thought yesterday just wasn't happening for him. I would have been quite happy to have seen him hooked earlier. You know, if someone's not having it, we have got Dominguez, we have got other players that can come in and just do it. You know, perform in a different way for sure, but it just wasn't happening yesterday for Anderson. The first goal was a shambles. Danscape, take us through it. Was it a corner?
A 0 XG chance goal, which is unheard of. It's not going to look good on the stats going forward, that one. It wasn't a corner, was it? It wasn't a corner. Nico Williams claimed quite loudly about it, and by all accounts, I couldn't see on the TV. I've not really.
Did the line wave for a goal kick? Because I didn't see.
I mean, I don't know. I can't. I've not watched the whole sequence back to see if he does. Just a zoomed in clip of it hitting his foot. So obviously, what Dyche is saying is that the lino flagged for the goal kick. Having the view that he did, he probably could have seen it, and the ref from somewhere behind the play has called it another way. So if that's the case, then it's a bad decision from the ref. Especially, you can normally tell by the way the players react, can't you? And Williams was very much like, that's our ball kind of thing. And they don't do that if it's an obvious corner. So it's a shame.
Even so,
it's just a corner, isn't it? Like if you can't defend a corner, it doesn't matter how the corner comes around. Defending the corner is the same process. And it was. It was a combination of poor from Sells in that he wasn't strong enough. It was a combination of kind of a smart bit of play I think, from Tyler Adams of Bournemouth to do enough to put him off and to do enough to knock him off balance, but without it being like, oh my God, that's a definite foul. I'm surprised that the ref didn't have to at least have a look at it, because I don't think the referee knows what happened in that incident, if you know what I mean. I feel like at set pieces now, referees don't really referee it during the actual play. They do the bit beforehand where they try and separate players and say, you know, don't wrestle each other and all that. But they sort of just let set pieces unfold because they know they've got VAR to check it anyway. So if it's a goal, VAR's going to check it and say, well, actually, no, this guy pulled this guy or whatever. So you sort of fall into this bit of a black hole where there's no way the ref can pay attention to all potentially 21 players that are in the box at that time and see who's pulling and shoving who. And then VAR look at it and go, well, it's not enough to question the referee's decision on the pitch, but has the ref actually seen it on the pitch is the issue. So look, I'm surprised he didn't at least have to just have a look at it and say, yeah, that's fine. You know, not enough contact, let it go. Obviously that's then left to the guy in the VAR office to basically say that, yeah, Sells should have just pushed him out of the way and come to claim it. And I do think Sells misjudged it a bit. You know, I think there was a little bit of misjudgment in there as well. And I think what's disappointing is the reaction to it just seems so just kind of like, oh, right, yeah, we've conceded. You know, it didn't seem like there was much like fight against the decision. But also then I think back to last season, how many times we blocked stuff on the line, like out of nowhere, those last-ditch blocks and things like that. And you're just thinking last season, Savona, for example, would have found a way to just like, not him because he wasn't here, but, you know, someone would have just found a way to head it up and off the bar and out or something. And it just felt a little bit like
Harry Toffolo against Spurs, for example, like last.
Yeah.
That was the line one.
It just gave you that feel of there's just something not, you know, there's just something that's not the same, and it's not at that kind of level you need to defend these situations. So that is a big area for Dyche to work on.
So it sounds like you're saying that it wasn't a foul, but there was enough there that on another day it could have been given as a foul. I mean, for example, Dan, as I stick with you before we bring Raf in, had Forest scored from a corner like that, and had Gibbs White been on their goalkeeper doing exactly the same thing, and the referee had blown for a foul and had disallowed the goal, how would you feel?
Well, I feel the other way, clearly, because
I think just the objectiveness of me is like, I couldn't see it properly. I asked you guys, was it a clear foul on themselves in the group? Because I couldn't see it. I got one look at it, and I didn't know what was going on. To me, it's like it just went straight in, and Sells was just all over the place. But, you know, that's the question is, was it a foul? Did the referee see it enough? Well, you're saying perhaps he didn't. We don't know. Is the VAR likely to look at that and say, well, that's just an on-field decision? There isn't enough of an obvious error there for me to ask the ref to even look at the screen. Raf, where are you on that? Was that a foul on Sells or not?
So if the referee, who, by the way, I thought had a pretty poor game for just decisions of what were fouls and were not fouls, and it just wasn't consistent throughout the whole game. If he had a basic knowledge of physics, which probably the referee does not without making assumptions, then one, the corner is really obvious it's not a corner, just through the flight of the ball. Being kicked that way and the ball ends up going that way, it can't have been Nico Williams that last touched the ball. And then Tyler Adams doesn't push Sells once, he pushes him twice after bundling him around as well. So he pushes him to off-balance him, Sells pushes him back and then goes to jump. And when you're in mid-air and someone, even if they lightly shove you, you have no way of exerting force backwards against that force whatsoever. So it impacts you disproportionately to what perceived is the strength of the push. So as the ball is coming into the box, Adams gives him a second shove into his midriff, like proper shove into his midriff. And he goes traveling into the middle of the goal, like actually back into the goal, of which then, by the time he can then get back and try and get across, there isn't enough time. Now, if this is anywhere else on the pitch and a ball's going over and so one person makes no attempt to play the ball whatsoever, the other person's trying to get to the ball and they just shove them or elbow them, that's a foul every single day of the month. Like it just is. So why? And this is one of the things that annoys me the most is suddenly there's new rules to the game in the penalty box that don't seem to apply elsewhere on the pitch. And this is the thing that really aggravates me about the game at the moment. It should just be clearly the same. If you are wrestling someone and making no attempt to get to the ball, that is a foul. If you are pushing someone mid-air, making no attempt to get to the ball, that is a foul. So for me, it was a clear foul. Well, I say clear. Again, to Dan's point, could the referee see it or not? But it is a foul. It is a foul.
So your view is that the ref doesn't see it, perhaps, and VAR should intervene and say, "I think you got this one wrong. Please go to the screen and review." And then it would be down to the referee. I've always said this: if he goes to the screen, the referee still has the ability to stick or twist. That's his call. And if he chooses in that moment to stick, okay, they normally do get overturned. Though I've seen it back since, and. My Forest hat on says that's a foul. I'm trying to be generous to the football world and say, well, look, maybe Sells should be doing better. He's got to be stronger against Tyler Adams. And actually, he gets pushed far, far too easily. It's a contact sport. There's going to be some contact. Goalkeepers have always been really, really protected. Had he been in the air getting a push, clear foul. Because he's got his feet planted, plant your feet and don't let him push you. So, look, obviously, I'm going to want it to be a foul, but it wasn't given. There were some remonstrations with the referee thereafter, but once it's given, it's given. And in typical Forest fashion, they're not react. I mean, it didn't go a second goal down straight away, but the second goal was always going to come. Bournemouth were on the front foot all the time. Forest had 0 chances on the Bournemouth goal. And the first half was as bad as it's been under Ange Postecoglou. And I'm not saying that, okay, that means that Deitch is bad. I'm just saying that this team are in a rut. And for whatever reason that may be, they're in a rut. And once you get into a rut, it's very difficult. It's all about levels of momentum. Last season, we got off to a flyer, and that momentum carried us forward, and we were winning games, and it gave us confidence, and it was breeding more confidence. And the same is true of this season for all the reasons we've spoken about on this podcast, from the Nuno and Ange affairs to the Morgan Gibbs-White contract to the really bad preseason to everything else that we've been speaking about. This team finds itself low on confidence, in a rut, and trying to find a way to win football matches. And yesterday just never for 1 second looked like it was going to happen. And it was kind of summed up. Raf, I come to you first on the second goal. It's kind of summed up for that second goal when Douglas Luiz and Elliot Anderson go for the same ball in the middle of the pitch and tackle each other. And then the ball spins free to Junior Krupi, who's in fine form. But you touched on it earlier, Raf. Milenkovic is normally the one that's behind Murillo, doing the block, and Murillo would normally be the one that goes out. But neither of them went out. I think the shot was, 25, 30 yards? Any fault at Sells for you? Could he have got to that, or was it too far in the corner? And elaborate for us on the Milenkovic mistake.
Raf. No, so what I would say is there's a lot of bashing of Sells. If you look at, he actually made a lot of good saves during the game. There was one, he was totally unsighted going in the bottom corner, and he managed to shove that out. Clearances were not being tossed back into the 6-yard box. He was getting them out sideways, out of danger. He actually did quite good, but I don't think shot stopping is the thing that we have an issue with Sells. Very quickly go back just for 2 seconds. The issue with that Sells goal wasn't Sells, it was the other Forest players. If that's not going to be a foul, we had no one protecting Sells. Bournemouth, whenever we had corners, Bournemouth had 2 players that were protecting their keeper at all times to make sure that we couldn't interfere with the keeper. Even though we tried, they just didn't allow it. So that is a failure of our system. But what I would say is, how much do we fear what happens at our back post the entire time, and it's never unmarked? Savona and Jesus were on that back post being highly effective with corners. So we're getting incrementally better in our structure in the box, but it'll come over time. For the second goal, I had noted as I was watching the game back, actually, the fact that Anderson and Luiz were occupying each other's space quite a lot of the time, and they were far too close together. And I think that was then symptomatic of then what happened of them both trying over exuberantly full points for effort and running towards that ball to try and do something. But it's symptomatic of this team not all knowing what their roles are at the moment, in a bit of transition of going back to the old way, both of them trying to be a 6 and both trying to clear balls away. So it's not comedic by any stretch of the imagination, but an error, which then the ball breaks. Anderson could have even fixed it, but he's knackered, so he lost that 1 yard to then actually get the ball back again after that, which he would have done if he was fresh. And then suddenly they're on a break. And again, backtracking centre backs. What's annoying is if you scan around you, there's no other Bournemouth player anywhere near. So it's 2-on-1 in our favour, and no one goes and actually sorts it out. It's not like if they'd gone, the pass was on to someone else and they would have just gone round the last defender. So it just was poor judgment of the situation, which is very frustrating because M&M did slightly better today. There were a couple of misplaced passes from Murillo, but he generally intercepted the ball an awful lot in that game. So they were getting back their mojo slightly. And I think after Porto, you felt their mojo kind of coming back. And it was just a bit frustrating that they, as a unit, and you're looking really nowhere else, because even with that arrow in the centre circle, those two should have dealt with that, and they didn't. So it's a bit frustrating.
Second goal, Danscape, was a carbon copy of Bournemouth last year when Clivert broke away, wasn't it? I mean, it literally broke away and they backed off and he fired it into the net. When are we going to learn our lessons? I know it was a different manager and it was back in January, but it was a carbon copy, wasn't it?
It was similar, yeah. I mean, the one last season was even worse because I think 5 players were all running back and nobody from the 5 challenged. At least this time it was sort of 2-on-1. But yeah, look, I don't think you can blame the manager for that. That's players making a split-second decision on what's the best way of closing down this danger. That's something you learn over your whole career as a defender, isn't it? Of how to read it in the situation. So unfortunately, whoever the manager is, one of those 2 defenders has to decide that they're going to go and close the ball and try and put the pressure on to snuff it out, I think. And I think if they did that, he would have stopped, turned sideways, and it would have been an easier one to defend. Looking at the shot, statistically, it's got a 0.16 post-shot XG, or which is sometimes known as the expected goal on target, which is low. That's saying that 16% of the time it should go in, and the rest of the time it should be saved, which is quite a low one. And I've seen some people sort of criticise Sells for that one because of the distance, I suppose. Because of the time between the ball leaving his foot and the ability to kind of get planted. So it's not going to look good on his stats for that one either.
Is that should save it, or it might go wide as well? Because it was close to could have gone wide either. So 16% goes in. Does that mean all the other percentage should be saved, or it could go wide on the other percentages as well?
All it's doing is it's dividing the goal up into areas, and it's saying, well, if it's in that point of the goal, I think because it's at a mid height and it's in the corner, but because of the distance between where it's been hit, it's just saying that statistically, whatever the difference is, 84% of the time it gets saved. So 84 times out of 100 it gets saved, and a few times it goes in. And that's like I say, it's not going to look good on his stats record for that particular one. Albeit, when I watched it, I thought it's just a hell of a strike. And sometimes these stats numbers aren't right. It is right in the corner. So I'm sort of torn. I think Sells made other similar saves that were good in the game. So I don't think he's completely off it, but that particular one just went straight into the side net. And I think it's down to the closing down of the defending, really, to stop someone having the ability to have that much time to pick their spot. And when it's not going for you, it's not going for you. So it goes right in the corner as opposed to bouncing off the post like ours did against, say, Chelsea.
In the comments, near-sighted Remembrance says Bournemouth could have scored more. I don't think they were peppering us. Sells made some saves, but I think there's saves that he should be making. One I think was going to go wide or hit the post. There was another one in the first half that he did do well with to put wide. But again, I still think there's saves he should be making. Colo says that the Cherries beat us in the first 20 minutes. The tactics are all wrong yesterday, he says. Overran in midfield, no goal threat. Well, definitely overran in midfield and definitely no goal threat. It was great to see Ben Dorr yesterday. He's in the comments. Dawn Tor says, Gibbs, White, Anderson, Louise were so poor in the first half. Yeah, I think I'll agree with you there on that one. Nick Derman says, I'm not surprised it wasn't given as a given, but it is a foul. This is the first goal. The Bournemouth player made no attempt to get the ball. He just obstructed Sells, so that's foul. And yeah, maybe rightly or wrongly, the bar for giving fouls in the box does seem to be, and maybe always has been, higher than on the rest of the pitch. And that's something that we can argue till the cows come home as well. Pat Brett says we seem to have no system at set pieces on both ends of the pitch. And that's something we'll talk about as well, because we didn't have many corners, but we were over-hitting corners. You know, I think Hutchinson took one. I think Anderson took the other one from the other side. And they just were so far over here. It was just embarrassing. I was shaking my head thinking, you know, we can't even do the basics right. But at half-time, we go in 2-0 down. I was one saying that I think we should bring Yates on, because I felt like he should have started the game, and at least let's try and get some kind of semblance of competition going in the middle of the park. So he brings Yates on, he brings Taiwo on for Igor Jesus, and he brings Amari Hutchinson on. I really enjoyed Dan Ndoye's performance against Porto. I didn't enjoy his performance yesterday against Bournemouth. He was another one that just looked like, you know, his level had dropped significantly. Before we kind of get into the substitutions and their impact, I think it's now time for us to quickly take a short break. We're going to come back and talk about those subs, and we're going to talk about Morgan Gibbs-White and his drop-off and the significance of that for this team.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Stu Freestone, our friend up in York with the Cheese Trader, 10% off when you quote Talking Reds. All right, so Raf, Morgan Gibbs-White, I know that you've been very happy to speak out on him, both for and against, to be fair. You know, you call it when it's good, you will, but you've been a voice that has been quite critical of Morgan Gibbs-White. What's your thoughts on him at the moment? Is he someone who should come out of the team? Do you think that's going to benefit him and benefit us? And if you do think he should come out of the team, what do we do? Do we go to a different shape, or do we finally give James McAtee some minutes?
So let's start with the positive. He had the best shot of anyone during the game. And that's what I want to see more from him. Sadly, his performances are getting worse. His frustration is boiling up. He is taking it out on other players around him, and it very much is becoming a bit of a cancer in the team, unfortunately. That's just how I see it, right? Probably getting massive pelters for that. But it was even in the second minute, there was a ball that was simply supposed to be laid off to Dan Ndoye, and he just hit it a bit too far in front of him. Now, it could have been 50-50 should Dan have run onto it a bit quicker. But you kind of both just go, okay, we'll try a bit harder. And then Morgan just chews him out massively. And it's just like, mate, you're supposed to be the captain on the pitch. This is not captain behaviour. I'm sorry, it's not. Then Hutchinson comes on, and there were elements of time when Hutchinson was actually in the 10. And there was one where he got the ball, effectively got 3 defenders all chasing him around, wriggled out of them, laid a ball back to Morgan, and Morgan was supposed to play it around the corner to the edge of the box to, I think, Savona, who'd run on. And the ball just went sailing out for a goal kick. And it's just like, dude, you are so off it. And I know there's like, well, he should just be played into form. I'm sorry. No one deserves to be on that pitch being played into form. It's just an absolute rubbishness. And apologies to those that have that. It's your opinion. There are no wrong opinions. But my opinion is you don't keep playing players to get them into form, especially when you've got an array of talent that is trying to get onto the pitch. Now, I do think there is a reason why McAtee has not been on the bench, and I do think it must be something to do with the virus or something like that, because we can see Hutchinson's come and got minutes, Tyro's come on, even Callie came on the pitch. So it doesn't really make any logical sense as to why he's not on the bench at least and coming off. So if he gets well during this week, time's come to drop Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm sorry, it's just for the betterment of the whole team. And I would be just trying to replicate that connection that the under-21 side had to great effect in the summer. Anderson gets a rest. Him interconnecting with McAtee, interconnecting with Hutchison. I don't know if back was going to be back or not, but Callum needs some mojo from somewhere and just make it all happen. But we need Anderson firing quick, progressive balls through, and that lot be going up. And you saw Dyche just telling the wingers, get up on the collar, be ready for those balls that were coming through. And Hutchison was the one that was doing it. So I think Gibbs-White, for me, it's just time, right? He'd actually probably be more effective when the opposition's knackered and he can use his energy and come on at 60, 65 minutes and make something happen, to be honest. So I would definitely drop him. And for me, if Jesus is fit and got some rest, start him, start McAtee, start Hutchison, and then one other winger. And then Louise has had a break, Anderson's had a break, the back line have had a break. And for me, that then gets exciting. Or actually, do you know what? Have Hutchison on one side, McAtee kind of floating 10 all round the other side, and put 3 midfielders in, because everyone knows how much I love a 4-3-3.
Okay. So Danscape, on Gibbs-White, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on him and whether you think he should come out of the team. Bearing in mind it's Man United next, and bearing in mind that he has performed against Man United when we played against them, I think he's a big game player. So me personally, I hear you. I don't think I'd drop him for this one, but I'll elaborate more on that in a moment. So your thoughts, Danscape and Gibbs-White, but also just on the players. Dyche has brought them in today. He said they're not fit enough. What he means is they're not fit enough for me. They're fit players that can play 90 minutes, but they're not fit enough for him. So are they going to be getting the rest that Raf's talking about? You know, are they going to be doing bloody drills all around, up and down the side of the Trent? You know, he wants them fitter to play in the system he wants. What are your thoughts on that?
Which is interesting, because what system does he want then? Because I would assume his system is similar to what we did last season, and we ran some of the least on the pitch almost, didn't we? In the Premier League, sorry, because we sat deep and we let teams do the running, and then we just hit them on the break as quick as we could. So I think that actually ties into the Gibbs-White discussion, because if that's the way we're going to play, that's what Morgan Gibbs-White thrives in. We've seen how good he is at allowing us to be a counter-attacking team when he's on the same wavelength as the wingers when it was Elanga that he played with for 2 and a bit seasons or whatever it was. You know, when he's on the same wavelength, he's the guy who can turn out of a tight situation and play someone in. So if we're going to play a counter-attacking style, it's very hard to see how you drop Morgan Gibbs-White. If we're going to try and play a different way against, say, Man United, which would be a big leap of faith for Sean Dyche, who, you know, I think it's fair to say his style is a counter-attacking style of football. It would be a big leap to suddenly think we're going to play that in a different way. And I struggle to see the argument for taking Gibbs-White out of a counter-attacking team. I think the issue is we have to build up the relationships again between him and whoever's playing in midfield, which has probably changed like every game apart from these last 2. You know, whether it's Louise and Anderson, working out where they're going to be on the pitch so that Gibbs-White doesn't have to also potentially clash with their positioning. I think that's part of it. I think building up the relationship with the wingers and trying to find a way to get in behind more is going to make a difference. I think he's I agree with what Raf's saying insofar as the body language and some of the, you know, the moments on the pitch is not good to see. I don't like seeing that, but I still think the foundation of a good player is there, right? And I don't see how dropping him out of this team against teams like Man United, like I've said, with the style that we're going to play, helps us. And I don't think I've seen anywhere near enough from McAtee to suggest he's going to impact that kind of game against Man United as the focal point of the team, right? Because that's what he would become. If someone else plays in the 10, and I know Raf might argue to play a 4-3-3 or something different, then I just don't see that he's shown enough to be that focal point. And I think what's interesting is under Ange played Gibbs-White outright, didn't he? In a kind of a more 4-3-3, 4-1, 4-1 kind of setup. And Gibbs-White got 2 of our assists from that role against Midtjylland and Betis by playing a good ball across and Doy or Jesus, whoever, you know. So there was a way to get something different out of Gibbs-White. But if we're going to play 4-2-3-1, I don't see who's better at fulfilling that role. And Yeah, I'm at a loss because I like him as a player. I can see why there's some frustration. I just think the last thing you do when you're trying to build a good team is drop your best players when you don't have the time, and you don't have the time in the squad and the time to bring someone else in. You praise Bournemouth for what they do, and I think part of that is that they've got so much consistency. The consistency is there that they've had the pre-season. A player comes in from from the defence, they're sitting alongside the rest of the team that knows the job, and the manager's got that clear view. We're on our third manager. He's got a different opinion. I would say you've got to play your best players.
I don't think Gibbs White's going to be dropped from Man United, and I don't think he's going to be dropped in the coming weeks. And this is why. We've all seen Gibbs White this season, over the whole season, and that's been under 3 different managers and him underperforming, although in flashes he has played well. He played well against Betis, against Porto on Thursday night. The whole team up their game. Dyche has only just come in. Yesterday was his second game, and this is his first week ahead of us with the whole squad at his disposal to start really getting into them. If he takes Gibbs White out now, then is he saying, actually, the way I'm going to build this team is not going to have you in it? And I don't think that is the case. I think the way he's going to build this team, however he sets it up, whether it's going to be counter-attacking like Nuno did, or as Pat Brett says in the comments, not to counter-attack in that way, but to battle it out and to win games of football with set pieces. I think that Gibbs White's going to be one of those best players that stays in the side, and he's now going to be drumming in his principles and how he wants the team to play, and that's Anderson, Gibbs White in the team. I think what we need to kind of also talk about, guys, is the differences now between the Europa and the Premier League. And where do we go from here? Because I don't think now that the Europa should be our priority in any way, shape or form, if it ever was. It's got to be about staying in the Premier League. And that, for me, is Morgan Gibbs White, Elliot Anderson, Douglas Luiz, those players playing, the games in a double week, this in the Premier League. And in the Europa, you're playing your McAtees, you're playing your other players, your second choices, if you like, against Sturm Graz, against Utrecht. We're now playing the lesser fancy teams in Europe. And I want to see us trying to get our best players on the pitch in the Premier League. But so on Gibbs White, I don't think he'll be dropped. I think Dyche now needs to work with the players this week, and that is going to have Morgan at the centre of it. He's got his flaws. We know that, but it's too early in the Dyche regime, I think, for Gibbs White to be dropped. If it was Nuno Espirito Santo in charge, and we were 8 games in or 9 games into a Premier League season and the other games as well, and we were still in the same position, I could make a call for maybe dropping Gibbs White. I think we've gone through so many different changes and so many different upheavals that, let's face it, which players are outstanding? I mean, Elliot Anderson's been great, but he's possibly been more great for England than Forest. He's really risen to the top, but he's looking leggy. Nico, we know about, is Mr. Reliable, and other players have played well in certain games. I think, for me personally, I think it's Gibbs White stays in. He was poor yesterday. So, Raf, where are you when it comes to Europa versus EPL? How worried are you? I know that you're, feeling quite optimistic, but just tell me, how worried are you that we could get sucked into a relegation battle?
I am not worried about the league. I'm just not, and everyone thinks I'm a bit bonkers, but here's my rationale. So we didn't have a fast start to last season at all. We were on about a point a game up to, I think we're about 11 points or something after 10 games or 9 games, right? So it's better than our 5 or whatever we've got at the moment, but it's not groundbreakingly different. And you've seen other clubs like Palace and others that were hugely upwardly mobile. We've had a huge amount of turbulence playing teams that, if you look where Sunderland are in the league, you look where Bournemouth are in the league, playing teams that are literally hitting their straps while we've got managers coming in, doing new systems. The whole thing is a bit of chaos. Ola's been out for a really long time. We don't have Wood back at the moment. Anderson's playing way too many games, and people's mojos are slightly off. Dyche, Wone and Stone offer us a full reset. there's the buy-in from all of the players. We get a week's rest. There is a massive reset. And for me, Man United and Leeds give us, Steve has corrected me, 16 points after 9 games. Fair. All right. That is a lot better than what we've got at the moment. But what I would say is that the Man United and League games will tell me, is there a need to be concerned now with this new management team? I'm not there yet. He came in, he beat a form Porto team, right? Which was absolutely great. We never get anything from Bournemouth. I've learned nothing at all at the moment that gives me concern, the fact that we're not going to start actually incrementally doing better. And then everyone comes back, the systems are done, we don't give away set piece goals, relationships start getting built with the players, the new players that we've got, to actually start scoring some goals, and we start actually getting intricate passes, and they all seem to work, and then we're off to the races, right? And that's the good thing as well, is for me, like you've said, like, is it about priority of Europe? For me, overarching, Europe is the priority. It is the priority. We're not going to get back into Europe for a while. It offers us a huge amount of money, so we don't have to sell players if we get very far in that league. And we can actually get Champions League just by winning the thing, with third favourites back again now to win the whole thing. But it does afford us the right balance with the teams that we've now got to play. The fact that we don't have to have a full strength side that goes out to play those games, so we could have that balance. But that's us actually focusing on Europa to do enough in Europa, but to give us the mojo, not losing in the Premier League. So when we go to those Europa games, we've got the mojo with the whole squad. It's not me focusing on the Premier League. That's a slight difference. I think we come to the same types of squad formations of horses for courses, but my focus is Europa. And it is, if we want to continue building as a club, yes, I know relegation will kill us. I'm not in relegation mode right now. But to build as a club, Europa is the focus.
It does look bad when you look at a league table and you see yourselves in the bottom 3 and you've only got 5 points. And when you look at a table, and I'll pop it up on the screen for everyone, there it is. Forest at 18th, above a very shit West Ham and an even worse Wolverhampton Wanderers. But, you know, when you see the red where it's loss, you know, it's really kind of frightening, and it will make a lot of people worry because of the upheaval. And so when you say, like Steve has there, again, we had 16 points after 9 games last season, that already makes you think, okay, there's been a drop off of some kind. But one thing I will want to kind of do is put some perspective on the teams we played, and I popped this in our WhatsApp group. So I'll quickly take you through on the like for like from this season to last season. And just so you know, I'm calling Leeds Leicester, I'm calling Sunderland Southampton, and Burnley Ipswich. So the 3 new teams replacing the teams that have got relegated. Brentford, first game of the season. Last season, we lost 2-0 at home. This year, we won 3-1. So we're already 3 points better off. Palace away was 1-1, same as last year, even. It was the West Ham game that they overturned a 3-0 defeat last year to beat us 3-0. So you're -3. So you're back on 0 points again. Arsenal, same result as last year, 3-0, stays the same. Burnley, who were Ipswich, we beat Ipswich 4-2 at their place last year. This year we got a 1-1 draw. So, you know, you've dropped a couple of points, so -2. Sunderland at home. Now, we call that Southampton, where we beat them 3-2. This year we've lost to Sunderland. So again, you're -3. So you're down now -5 points. Then you play Newcastle, Chelsea and Bournemouth. All the results were we lost against them away and at home to Chelsea. We lost against Bournemouth. You know, that hasn't changed. So on a points for points basis against the teams we played last season in those relevant matched fixtures, we're at -5 in terms of points, which again doesn't sound great, but maybe it kind of says, well, look, actually put it into perspective. We're only different on 3 fixtures. The West Ham game and the Sunderland game are the 2 that stand out, where we've lost at home. Okay, they're the ones that stand out as being a wince moment. Burnley away, Angie's first game in the Premier League, if I think that's right. He gets us a 1-1 draw. So look, I'm trying to add some context so people go, okay, fine. So this time last year, Newcastle, Chelsea, Bournemouth, we lost all 3 of those games, and we've just lost all 3 of those games again, Dan. So can you understand what I'm trying to do? I'm kind of trying to put a little bit of perspective on it to say, well, look, there's a lot more fixtures coming up, and Raf's right to say, look, guys, come on, everyone just settle down a little bit. Dyche has come in to perform the major reset. Bournemouth away went a lot better than it did in January. So let's take that positive away. And he's now going to get into these players. So look, that league position is bound to change. What do you think?
I mean, I do that same analysis of comparing the fixtures, and we're 5 points behind, but we have to win the next 7 games to get back on track, right? 7 in a row. So that's the trouble with it, is we've kind of lumped them all together. Our bad form is out the way, and we kind of can't.
But do we though? Sorry, do we have to win the next 7 games? Are the next 7 teams that we are playing games that we won last year?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We won the next.
All those fixtures: Leeds, Liverpool, whoever else is coming up in the Premier League. We won all those like-for-like games last year. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. So that's the flip side of that. Unfortunately,
kicking the bollocks in.
But we don't need. But the thing is, we don't need to hit the same. We don't need to hit the same level as last year, right? We got 56 points. Realistically, to be safe and comfortable, 45 points, right? So we can afford to drop 10 points on what we did last year. But even so, if we're 5 behind already, realistically, that means that within these next 7 games, we can't drop too many points, because you've still got obviously the rest of the season to go. You can actually put the table up however you want, right? We could be 5 points behind. You could look at teams that come back from worse records than we're on. Bournemouth under Iraola had 3 points after 9 games in that first season, and then they shoot up to finish in the top half. There are examples that do it. However, what worries me is that there is a difference between a team that you can see are clearly well-coached, well-organised, and are just getting unfortunate in key moments of results, right? Like very small mistakes, or teams that are taking their chances. And then there's teams that just seem so inconsistent between performances. And that's unfortunately what I'm seeing with us. Is I'm not seeing that consistency. And that's not really down to one manager or the players. It's down to the fact that we've had 3 managers in 9 games in the Premier League, which is just crazy. So my concern is, can Sean Dyche do enough to start to rectify that and make us look like a team that is being unlucky in games, as opposed to a team that's making errors like letting goals straight in from corners, or giving players so much room that they can take all day to shoot. And that, unfortunately for me, there's been too many moments so far this season that look like the kind of thing that happens in a relegation season, because it's just really bad defending or missing sitters. And that's ultimately, it comes down to the mentality of the players, the mentality of the group. And I think that's Dyche's biggest challenge, is combining the kind of effort and the work and the detail of set pieces and get into the confidence and the focus. And what's surprised me about the performance of Bournemouth is that against Porto, I thought we had that. We looked so much more like we were last season in terms of that drive and focus and intensity. It was a surprise to see us then sort of so far off that against Bournemouth a couple of days later, because we talk so much about momentum and, keep the same players in and build that group and that bond and everything. And it just wasn't quite there in back-to-back games. So having a week off will be a good reset. So there's sort of no point saying, are we in a relegation battle or not? Because there is no dividing line. I think everyone up to Palace could be in a relegation battle still, based on the points they've got. Like I looked at it earlier, there are teams that have had Palace's starts the season that get relegated, right? So everybody in the bottom half of the league is always in a relegation battle if you have a run of 7 or 8 bad games. And at the same time, if you put not necessarily 7 wins together, but like we did last season, 5 or 6 wins together, you turn your season around. So somehow it just comes down to whether Dyche is the man to kind of do that. And hopefully the benefit of a week on the training ground is actually ridiculously rare this season. So let's make the most.
I guess you're right to say, look, there's so much more football still to be played, and teams are in the position they find themselves in because of the games they've played and the points they've earned so far. So let's take Bournemouth, for example, our opponents from yesterday, who currently sit second on 18 points. Now, I've already said I think Bournemouth as a team are really good. I really do. But would I put a bet on now that Bournemouth will stay second come the end of the season? No, I don't think I would. I just don't have the faith that team is strong enough over the course of the season to maintain that position, I think they'll drop out the top 5. I just think it'll happen. Based on what I know about them as a team and based on the fact they've got a lot more fixtures to come. And so therefore I say the same thing about Nottingham Forest. Do I think Nottingham Forest will stay 18th based on the fact they've got lots more games to play and what I know about them and the teams that are coming up? I don't. Obviously, we know that Forest have been through, adding context to this, the 3 managers and the whole resetting and everything. But Dyche, Raf, has been bought in for a reason. He's been bought in specifically as the firefighter. Some might say it was too early, but it's happened. So does that kind of support your view that we'll be okay?
Yeah. Are we going to get worse than we are right now? No. Are we going to stabilise? Yes.
It can.
Is that what? I don't know how. Really, I don't know really how. To be fair, if you take away that Brentford result, like you can't get worse in the league. To be honest, so I just don't see how it's going to get like consistently worse than what we've got right now, and it's purpose and structure and getting something together. Do I think instantly there's going to be a rebound? No. But if I could fast forward to January, February time, I think we are going to have a season very similar to Crystal Palace's last season. I think that it was
that. It means the FA Cup final.
And what? But why not? If our team is suddenly getting it together and beginning to build those relationships, and we actually hit our straps and we crescendo at the right time through the season at the back end, that's how you start winning cups. And I think the fact that, as Dan says, we don't need 7 wins in a row. When you're down the bottom, it's very different. We were lofty last year. We had to win every game just to tread water at the top end. We don't need to do that down the bottom. You win 2 games in a row and you fire up like 4 positions, basically. So, it's very much easily done it, a bit of stability. There's no miracles happening, but we'll suddenly start seeing more cohesion, getting more excited as player intricate moves start going. Someone or a couple of people start actually finding the back of the net and confidence starts coming. We get through Christmas. There are a lot of games to come through that. We pick up the odd win and it's through there as well. Then we get into the new year and I think we just go up and up and up. And this dials back to why I'm not throwing in, Europa towel right now. I still think it's the most important because I think with Dyche in, we don't go for a 4th manager in a season. We stick with 3 for the season and just keep Dyche for the rest of the season. Then I think we get that stability over half a year we've got with him, and things will get better and better through the season. So yeah, I do think the future is bright. The future is orange.
The future is Dyche. I think with this squad, the amount of players we've got, that we can battle on both fronts if you make those changes on a Thursday night, guys, where you see, the back was coming in, the McAtee's coming into the midfield, just using Sangare more, who I thought might play yesterday, but didn't even get a look in. Okay, we're out of time. I guess the one question that I'm going to pose now, but I'm not going to let you answer this now, guys. So this is your takeaway question, and this is also for the audience as well. It's a takeaway question to maybe revisit on Thursday, because these guys will be back with me on Thursday, and I'm hopeful Richard will be able to be with us as well as we preview the Man United game. The impact of Edu, the biggest backfire in recent memory. That's your takeaway thoughts question. To analyze the impact of Edu, and is it the biggest backfire in recent memory? Some will say that's harsh. Some will say that absolutely. But I want you guys to kind of have a think about that. Thank you so much to everyone that's been in the comments. Okay, we are out of time. Please go ahead and hit like on this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We've had a good few of our Australian friends depart, and 1 or 2 have stuck around. We thank you for that. Sean Dyche in at Forest. Long week ahead with lots of hard work. Danscape, any closing thoughts?
Bournemouth didn't have a single shot inside our penalty area by looking at the stats, so there's a good sign. I think that is at least some indication that we were a little bit more whatever, defensively
It was
solid in
two
this
shit
game.
goals, wasn't it? They didn't rip us apart.
Yeah,
It was
they had
two
a lot
really
of good
shit goals.
shots. But they were
Christie
from
should
long
have
range.
scored with about 5 minutes left instead of backheeling it to.
Yeah, I know, but
players.
that's at that point of the
Should have
game.
did it
I
with
mean, look, part of it is game state because ultimately, once they're 2-0 up, they're not trying to attack as much, are they, and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I think there was a little bit of hope in that. And my final thought is that Justin Cliver has only scored 1 goal this season, and I don't know whether Bournemouth fans are calling for him to be dropped from their team at the minute. So results also do play a part in how we assess player performances and all that sort of stuff. I just think let's see what happens the next couple of games, and we'll look forward to that on Thursday, like you say.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for being here today. Raf, any closing thoughts, mate?
Yeah, just keep your chin up, right? This at the moment, there's no point worrying when we've got this many games left to happen in the league. Okay, we've got a change of circumstance. We've got to give it a chance. Porto was a really good example that good things can happen. The Man United game will be really, to have 2 games at home, Man United and Leeds, both of those clubs I have a particular disdain for as well. Let's see what happens after that. Regroup. You know what? We could lose and get battered both of those games. I'll be back on, and then maybe I'll be panicking as well, like everyone else. So, but until then, chin up, everyone.
We are Forest fans. We love our club, and it hurts when we lose. And we have been losing a lot of games lately. Sean Dyche has walked through the door and is saying all the right things, and he's brought a coaching team that know the club. And the feel-good factor has been back. But we knew that it wasn't going to be an overnight thing. We knew that we're going to have to suck up some defeats, and that's still going to be the case. Edward Wyavoz says in the comments, will Dyche be afforded the same 7-game losing streak? No, he won't, because he won his first game. See you soon.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Dark and Red.